The footsteps echoed down the stone halls of the palace, fast and deliberate. Somewhere in the distance a child wailed. Steel clattered, doors slammed. The guards moved swiftly, not in defense, but in pursuit. Screams were quickly silenced. First the wet slap of a blade, then the thud of a small body hitting the ground. Blood was running down the steps of the house of David, and the one who ordered it all, the one who wore the crown, stood watching from the shadows. Her face betrayed no sorrow, no remorse, only calculation. Her name was Athaliah. She was the queen mother of Judah, the daughter of Jezebel, the product of a kingdom that had long since abandoned God. She had married into the royal house of Judah, and now, with her son King Ahaziah dead, she saw her chance to take it all. But first, she had to eliminate the heirs. And so she did. One by one, every prince, every grandson, every boy connected to the house of David was hunted down and slaughtered. Cribs were overturned. Chambers were raided. Infants were dragged from their mothers and slain. Mothers, too. Any who protested were silenced. It was a massacre not just of bloodlines, but of prophecy. For Athaliah knew the old promises. She knew the words spoken over the house of David, that a son of David would sit on the throne forever, and she was determined to erase that line, to end it here, to become queen in her own right, not as consort, not as regent, but as ruler. And no one stopped her, not the nobles, not the priests, not the people. The nation had fallen so far that they didn't even protest. They bowed to her. They accepted her rule, perhaps out of fear, perhaps out of apathy, perhaps because Baal's name now rang louder in their ears than Yahweh's. But in all her savagery, she missed one child. His name was Joash, just a baby at the time, still nursing, too young to understand the sounds of death outside his door. He would have died that night too, had it not been for one woman. Jehosheba. She was the daughter of King Jehoram, sister to the late King Ahaziah, and aunt to Joash. More importantly, she was the wife of Jehoiada, the high priest. And when she heard the screams, when she saw the blood being spilled, she acted. She slipped into the palace under cover of night. She found the child, still alive, still untouched. And with the courage of someone who knows the stakes, she wrapped him tightly, silenced his cries, and carried him through darkened halls. She smuggled him out, through passageways beneath the palace, through the gates of the city, into the temple, into the house of God. And there, in the most sacred space in Judah, she hid him. For 6 years, Joash lived in the temple. He was raised not by palace servants, but by priests. Not among opulence, but among sacrifice. He learned to walk between pillars carved with lilies and pomegranates. He learned to speak from the scrolls of the law. He knew the scent of incense before he ever smelled the perfumes of royalty. And each day, Jehoiada and Jehosheba watched over him, guarding not only his life, but the covenant. Because Joash wasn't just a child. He was the last living heir to the throne of David. He was the one thing standing between Judah and total apostasy. Outside, Athaliah reigned. She ruled with cruelty and cunning. She brought the worship of Baal fully into Judah. She erected altars, appointed priests, desecrated the holy things. The temple fell into disrepair. The people's hearts turned cold. Justice was twisted. Blood ran freely in the streets. And yet, behind those ancient stone walls, Joash grew, a living secret, a divine defiance. Until the day came when silence was no longer enough. When Joash turned 7, Jehoiada knew the time had come. The boy could not remain hidden forever. Judah needed a king, not just in name, but in righteousness. And so Jehoiada summoned the captains of the guard, the men of valor, those who still feared the Lord. Quietly, secretly, they were brought into the temple, Some had thought the line of David was extinct. Some had stopped hoping. But when Jehoiada revealed the child, when they saw his face, his resemblance to the old kings, they believed, and they wept. Then they pledged their lives. They were divided into shifts, each assigned to protect the boy, the temple, and the high priest. The ancient weapons of David, shields, spears, were brought out of storage. Men stood shoulder to shoulder, prepared for battle, not against foreign invaders, but against their own queen. On the appointed Sabbath, the people gathered, not in protest, not in rebellion, in hope, in covenant. And as the sun rose over Jerusalem, Jehoiada brought Joash forward. He placed the crown on the boy's head. He anointed him with oil. And for the first time in 6 years, the cry rose up in the city, "Long live the king!" The noise reached the palace. Athaliah, startled and enraged, rushed to the temple. She pushed through the crowds, demanding answers. And when she saw the boy, standing beside the high priest, wearing the crown, flanked by guards, her face twisted into fury. She tore her robes and screamed, "Treason! Treason!" But no one moved. The people had chosen. The priests had prepared. Jehoiada gave the order. The guards seized her, dragged her from the temple grounds, lest they defile the sanctuary, and executed her at the horse gate. The queen who had murdered children to steal a throne died without ceremony, and Joash, at 7 years old, became king of Judah. What followed was a season of renewal. Under Jehoiada's guidance, Joash led the nation in covenant restoration. The people tore down the altars to Baal. They destroyed the idols. The temple was repaired, its stones scrubbed clean, its vessels replaced. Sacrifices resumed. The law was read. The people rejoiced. It was as if light had returned after a long, terrible night. Joash reigned with justice and wisdom. But the wisdom wasn't his own. It was Jehoiada's. The priest was more than a mentor. He was a spiritual father, the one who raised him, hid him, anointed him, guided him. As long as Jehoiada lived, Joash ruled well. But time does not wait for anyone. And eventually, the old priest died. With Jehoiada gone, something shifted in Joash. Perhaps it was insecurity. Perhaps the loss of his spiritual anchor. Perhaps the whispering voices of new officials and foreign dignitaries. But Joash began to drift. He tolerated the return of pagan influence. He allowed the people to once again set up Asherah poles and secret altars. He permitted the compromises that Jehoiada would never have stood for. And then, he did something far worse. When Zechariah, the son of Jehoiada, stood before the people and rebuked the nation, reminding them of the covenant, pleading with them to return to the Lord, Joash had him killed, in cold blood, in the temple. In the very place where he had once been crowned, Joash allowed the son of the man who saved his life to be murdered. And as Zechariah died, he cried out, "May the Lord see this and call you to account." That cry echoed into the heavens, and judgment came swiftly. Enemies arose. Aram invaded. They plundered Jerusalem, killing leaders, looting treasures. Joash, wounded and humiliated, retreated to his bed. But even there, he found no safety. His own officials turned on him. Perhaps they had served under Jehoiada. Perhaps they remembered Zechariah. Perhaps they simply saw what the king had become. And so they entered his chamber and killed him. Joash was buried in the city of David, but not in the tombs of the kings. Even in death, he was denied the honor of his royal ancestors. The boy who had once been saved by the temple had turned against it. The child preserved by a priest had ordered a priest's son slain. His legacy was one of promise, broken, a reign that began in miracle and ended in disgrace. But still, through Joash, the line of David continued. The promise endured, not because of Joash's righteousness, but because of God's. Because God keeps His word even when men fail. Thank you for listening to Divine Crime. Subscribe for more true stories from the most dangerous book ever written.